Welcome to the Worth Listening podcast, where we focus on having positive and productive conversations about money. Join your host, Lauren Williams, four-time Olympian turned financial planner, as her guests share their money stories. We aim to help you own your personal money story and feel good talking about it. Money is a tool that can help you live the life you want. You should feel comfortable listening, sharing, and communicating about it. Now, here's your host, Lauren Williams.
Good day, kind people. Lauren here. Today, we're talking to Brandon Okpalobi. Brandon is the founder and CEO of DIBIA Athletic Development and DIBIA Dream Incorporated. One is a nonprofit and one is a for-profit organization. During his college days, Brandon walked into the basketball team at the University of Miami, eventually earning a scholarship. After college, he worked for some impressive organizations before venturing out as an entrepreneur. Brandon and I discussed how he made a $2 allowance work in high school. Then we talked about walking on that Division I college basketball team and what the process was like for earning a scholarship. And finally, we spent some time talking about how you don't have to be playing sports to be involved in sports. Brandon is still involved with basketball by running a nonprofit organization and a for-profit business. Let's listen to Brandon share his money memoir. Brandon, so happy to have you here today. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest on Worth Listening.
Very happy to be here.
Let's start with a little bit of history about yourself. Why don't we start with the first memory that you have of money?
Oh, wow. When I was a kid, I used to get a $2 allowance. And that really taught me the value of a dollar because you can't buy anything with $2 except candy. So then I would have a lot of cavities as a kid. But, So
what age group are we talking about then when this $2 allowance start?
I guess you could say it started, let's say, second grade is where I can remember. And it went into like 9th or 10th grade, something ridiculous. So, all your friends have money when they go out and you have $2 or, 4 or 8, or, nothing significant because you want to buy stuff as a kid. So I really understood the value of a dollar early. I really understood having money, like how it feels to not have money. So that first memory of money is not the best, but it definitely taught me a lot of good lessons.
So when would you say then that money became valuable to you then? If, you had this $2 allowance, did it teach you really about saving? Did it teach you like, this is a really valuable thing and I need to hold on to it? Like, how did you feel about money then?
I don't want to say it taught me to save because, when you have such a small amount of money and you're looking at it throughout the week, you're like, I could save this, but then again, I could buy something small and just keep buying small things. So until I got older, maybe the 9th grade is when I started really trying to understand the real value of a dollar, because then I had to really find my own food at times or like pay for food. And when you have to pay for food, you start to realize like, okay, I need real money to pay for food. Like this is a necessity. So then you start to understand, okay, about saving or about stretching that dollar and things like that. It's a very different conversation as I got older.
So if you didn't have money in that realm and you were looking for money for, like you said, food and those things, you were still living at home with your parents, I'm sure, in 9th grade. Is that correct?
Right.
So some of the food was taken care of, but this was more like the extracurricular food, the pizza with your friends, hanging out, etc. Did you ever want to like go ahead and get a job, or like what kind of feelings did you get in high school, like you said, when you realized that this $2 was not really going to stretch to help you be able to do the things you wanted to do at that time?
I was looking to get a job. My food issue wasn't really more of like extracurricular. My food issue was my home. I had like some issues with my parents at the time. So it was like a necessity. So I would spend money on food, but then at the same time, like my grandmother lived close, so she helped out. But looking for a job, I actually did look for a job. I could not really find a job that I could do while playing basketball and going to school and some other things. So it just really taught me to like do other odd jobs. Like I would help other family members and stuff like that, so that, you had to make a way to make this happen. So that kind of helped me later in life to always like figure out how to make things happen and stuff like that.
Definitely. So talk a little bit about basketball and what kind of role that played in helping you develop and become a more mature adult that, like, they say sports gives you so many life skills. What kind of life
Right.
skills was sports giving you during this time period where you were using money to make ends meet?
Yeah, I mean, sports gives you discipline. It definitely teaches you discipline to understand what's important, and really understand of how things work. And discipline also, I mean, sports also was like your family. So like when you had issues and things like that, you had friends you can talk to and things like that. But it definitely allowed me to lean on people. But then again, understand that how hard I worked in sports is what I need to work in life, or when I got a job, or anything else I did to be successful. It's that 10,000 hours rule. You put in so many amount of hours in basketball, you need to do that in other things in your life so you can be successful as you are in basketball.
Gotcha. All right. So after high school, you went on to college, right?
Right.
Answer I already know. The question I already know the answer to because we both went to the U.
The U, yes.
So tell us a little bit about your college experience, about paying for college, figuring out the expenses related to college, and how you handled that time period of life and money then.
Yeah, so I had a academic or partial academic scholarship, and then walked on the basketball team. So I didn't have to pay that much my first couple of years. But kids always struggle in college, so you're always trying to find that help. You call home so many times, and they're like, no, or they make you wait. And then in the UC, there's just every credit card company with a teddy bear and pizza. Kids in college, they're hungry, so they'll want a pizza. So you'll get a card. And if you're not smart, you'll start to just spend that credit limit or spend money however. So it definitely makes you realize that you can't just go here and just start spending this money or, have all these credit cards. We would be in college struggling to eat. You use all your meals for the week, waiting on my roommate Steve's mom to send us money or my dad to send us money just so we could have a meal for that day. So really college taught me a lot about just not really I would struggle, but more or less how to manage money, how to manage your time. That was a huge thing because, you can have all your classes in the morning and you're free later. And then playing basketball, we were on the road. So we got per diem, which was great because I didn't know anything about per diem. Like the first road trip, they handed me this envelope with money. I was like, well, wait, what did I do for this money?
Per diem is great.
Right. Do I owe you something for this? Like where? So that was cool. So just the whole college experience was amazing for me, at least.
Cool. So you were talking a little bit about credit cards. Can you expand a little bit more? You were saying like they're all over the place at the time period we were in college. Is that one of the pitfalls that you ran into? Was credit card debt something that you succumbed to? And then you also talked a little bit about academic scholarship being on partial academic. So did you have to work to make up the other half of that? Did you take out student loans? How did that aspect work?
Yeah, well, credit cards, no. I mean, I just saw a lot of kids start to get credit cards and then have those issues. And now that, my nonprofit does a lot with financial literacy, we start to see that people get credit cards and then they go into debt. So that is a cycle for them. As far as on the scholarship side, I took out some small loans, and then like my freshman year, athletes couldn't work as it was like an NCAA rule during your sports season. But then my sophomore year that changed. So I started working, which helped with, extra costs. I had a car and pay for gas, pay for your cell phone, and pay for tuition too. So that rule change really allowed me to be able to support some of the things or some of the expenses that were going on in school.
Okay. And so did you have goals or aspirations of, pro basketball or pro sports after college? Or did you go saying, I love basketball, I want to play while I'm in college, and really looking forward to the opportunities that, my education is going to afford me?
Oh, of course. I mean, everyone, no matter if you never play, you always think, oh, I'm going to go to the NBA or play overseas. And I realized my junior year, we would go to a lot of booster meetings and we would just hang out with each other. And then my junior year, I realized, the people I was playing against in real games, I looked at their stats and they, everybody in the NBA or scouts knew who they were. They had no idea who I was, and my stats weren't even comparative to those that I was playing against. So I realized look, I probably have to get a job and I need to network with these boosters. And I started doing that, and that allowed me to have my first job, my second job, and a lot of the jobs I've had after, because of networking with boosters and realizing early that, hey, I'm not going to make it to the NBA because only 1% or less than 1%, I think, make it to the NBA. I think it's 1% make it to the NFL. So it's very interesting how a lot of guys, even now, as I'm at 35, some of the guys I play basketball with are really just starting to find themselves now. And that is very interesting because they were so stuck on either making it to the NBA or trying to play overseas or not taking their education seriously and not preparing themselves for life after sports.
Yeah, it's a tough thing that a lot of athletes struggle with is that transition, and they think that it's just for, pro athletes who transition from pro sports to life after sports, but it is something that a lot of college athletes struggle with it as well. And even some high school athletes who don't go on to play sports in college. There's a big transition and there is a gaping hole that's left when sports leaves your life, and being able to fill that gap and feel appreciative of all you've gotten from sports, I think is really, really an important lesson that we've got to continue to instill in everybody who plays sports, because it gives you so many skills, but it also is very painful when you transition from something that's been so wonderful in your life to, the absence of that.
Right.
Yeah. So Can you talk to us a little bit about what happened then? You got out of college. You said you got, your first couple of jobs. How did you start to set yourself up financially? What did you start to think about as it pertains to your future? And how did it lead you to where you are now and what you're doing now? Tell us a little bit about all of that.
Yeah. So I started with the Orange Bowl committee, being an assistantship for the ACC. And then I got a job with Deloitte & Touche. Early on, you're struggling. So you're trying to pay back debt. You're trying to pay rent, you're trying to pay for your car or whatever. So you get caught up in different things. And when I say caught up, you're just struggling. So it took me a while to really kind of get into a mode where there was saving involved. There was emergency funds or things like that, because I just never had it. I was always working to pay for something just cause. Then I started working for the University of Miami. And then I started my own business, training athletes in sports, because I believe that you may not have to play the sport, but you can always be involved in the sport or work for the sport or things like that. So I started that company in 2011, training athletes. We do camps and clinics in New Orleans, Miami, and Bermuda. And then we do sporting events for larger organizations. Out of that spun our nonprofit, which is called DREAM. DREAM stands for Development Through Recreational Education for Athletic Minds. And there we have the Dream Academy, which is after school programming. And one of our 5 pillars is financial literacy, because we believe kids in the community do not understand the value of a dollar, nor do they understand the power of money. In our community, we spend a lot of money on materialistic things for whatever reason that may be. And you can like to have things, but it can't be where, okay, I just bought these new Jordans, but then I can't eat or I can't pay rent or something important has come up, but I have these shoes on my feet. Something will always come up. Like we can never plan. Like people say, you'll never have enough money or there's never enough planning. But you can have a fund where it's like, okay, look, I'm not struggling. So yes, I can go buy this or I can do that. There's nothing wrong with having nice things, but you need necessities.
Right. I completely agree.
And things like that. Right. So those are things that we teach our kids.
Yeah. So you're talking a little bit about planning. Can you talk a little bit and rewind for us and talk about what your planning looked like for starting your own business and starting the nonprofit? Like you said, you were working. Was that kind of a side hustle at first and you had to save a certain amount in order to be able to, go off and be able to do those things? And then also a little bit like, what's the process of creating your own business? What's the process of creating your own nonprofit? Can you take us back and walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. I started the business as a hobby. So it really started in 2005, but it was a hobby. And I was busy with other jobs that I really couldn't give it the time it needed. When I was at I had a little bit more time. So it definitely grew. When I parted ways with the University of Miami, I had $1. Literally, I started my company with $1 and a dream. I did not plan on starting that business at that time. I was actually going to leave to take a job with the NBA or Monmouth University in New York. But I literally had $1 in my account when I started my business. And I just knew that, hey, I needed to pay rent. I had a new car and I wanted to keep some sense of the lifestyle that I had. And that fueled my fire to grow. So it just kept going. And then we started making money. Then we were able to do things. The nonprofit, I did not want it to run that business the same way, but it definitely kind of started the same way. It started with startup money for my for-profit. And, first 2 years were a struggle. And now we're starting to go after larger grants, larger foundations, and have the real support of the community, because, that's what most nonprofits are. You reach out to the community or foundations or grants or things like that. So it's definitely grown. And now we're in that phase where, okay, we have funds to do the things that we really need to do. We're starting to think about endowments, so we don't have to ask as much for money anymore, and really make sure that this program could continue past or outlive me. How I started the business was just, you went online, you look at how to start a business. You go online, you get your LLC with Sunbiz, and you register, and then you just start your business, get your local business tax receipt and things like that, and start moving. Now, the nonprofit is a little different, where, you have to get registered with the IRS, and that could take some time. But for us, we were blessed. It did not take very long. And then from there, one thing people don't know is that you have to register with the Department of Agriculture to raise funds.
In the state of Florida.
In the state of Florida. That was huge, because I didn't know that. And once we did that, we were fine. But there's a lot of people who will ask me about, starting a nonprofit. And when I say that, they have no idea, and they've already raised funds. So it's very important to know about every process you need to be able to raise funds or start a nonprofit or a for-profit. And then from there, it was just basically letting people know what we were doing, doing a lot of marketing. Everything is word of mouth, and just making sure we provide a quality program on both sides, where one, people want to come and support us, but two, that we're really making an impact in the community that is needed right now.
Can you talk a little bit about why you decided to do both a nonprofit and a for-profit?
Sure. We just started the for-profit and just going in that direction. And then a lot of my friends were starting to see pictures that I would post. And they're like, a lot of the pictures you post are with kids who don't look like you. And I said, well, we market to everybody. These are kids who show up. And then I said, well, maybe there's a reason why certain kids don't show up and things like that. But then there's also a strong need in the community for quality program. And I knew that for sure. So I just wanted to make sure that we were able to provide things that the community needed. Also, under my for-profit, we were doing a lot of nonprofit activities. We had a toy drive. We were scholarship kids at college. We were scholarship kids to our camp who couldn't afford it. We would do a lot of nonprofit activities. And then we said, well, why don't we just take these nonprofit activities, because they're taking that from our bottom line, and put them on a nonprofit. So, if we want to scholarship kids to college, we can ask for funds for that. If we wanted to, do a toy drive, or if we wanted to have an after school program, or anything we wanted to do that was nonprofit related, we can do it on our own. Plus, we were tired of dealing with fiscal agents and it's a third party and things like that. I don't like dealing with other people or waiting on other people for certain things. I've never done that. So when you have to do that, it becomes tiresome, and it's a process. So we split the two, and we allow both of them to just flourish, where they both have their own program, and they do work together on some things, but most of the time they're on their own and going forward. And it just allows us to navigate different environments very differently. We can do stuff in Bermuda where if it's our nonprofit, we'll do a lot of STEM stuff and things like that. If it's our for-profit, we'll stick to sports and go from there. So we're able to really navigate some different climates fairly well.
Okay. That sounds interesting. So what would you say then has been the hardest thing about entrepreneurship? Because you started both of these organizations, on your own and got things up and running. And how do you go from I'm working for someone to I'm working for myself, and I'm now maybe hiring people?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I always remember when I have to hire people that my dad said good help is hard to find. And I never thought about it, but both of my parents were entrepreneurs. I knew they were, but I never really paid attention to it. And then one of my friends, when I was part of the Young Professional Network, was like, you don't need to work for anybody. You need to work for yourself. Because I expressed, frustration to her about some of the issues I was having at work. And then from there, I think it just worked. I prayed really hard, and God opened a lot of doors. And basically, at the job that I had prior to starting my business, they would always ask for ideas, but then they would always turn down the ideas or didn't like the ideas or whatever it was. I basically just got tired of giving away ideas that I thought were great and, the company not using them. So ideas on this side, I just come up with ideas and they work because I'm not saying every idea that I come up with is amazing. It's just that I've actually done some research. I've seen it work other places and we tweak it to make sure that it doesn't have the same pitfalls that it had other places, but they work. And then also it's great being your own boss because, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. There are days where you are stressed about, hey, when is this check coming in? This check is late, or, this staff member called out and they didn't call out on time, or different things like that. You are stressed, but I tell people it's good stress. I have on my nonprofit, we have 16 staff members who are all amazing. They believe in the community. On our for-profit, we don't have as many staff members. We have subcontracted consultants, and they believe in the mission as well. So, there's tons of bad things that can happen in entrepreneurship. Your ideas cannot work. People cannot support you or whatever. But, at some level, if you're providing quality, people will support what you're doing. It may not happen when you want it to. It may not happen as fast as you want it to. But at the end of the day, as long as you're working hard and you believe in it and you're passionate about it, everything will work out.
Yeah, I completely believe in the grind as a fellow entrepreneur myself. If you had to sum up that one single thing that is the hardest thing about entrepreneurship, what would you say that is?
Probably the one single thing is, you're working extremely hard and you're not getting the support from the people who you feel are close to you. And you see how they support other people or other things or, buy from other companies or things like that. That is something that I really had to adjust how I operated on. I would get really upset, on things that we do where people wouldn't support it, or when I would support them on what they were doing. That really, really caused me to be upset. But I mean, I'm much better now. But that is the main thing for me. I think other people may have issues as far as, funding. A lot of people, I tell people when they start a business, anytime someone asks me about advice about starting a business, I tell them to save up 6 months to a year's worth of operating expenses. The reason why I say that is because you do not want to start the business, get discouraged, and then go work for someone just because you don't have funding, because funding is huge. It can make or break a business. But if you have 6 months to a year saved, you can fund those crazy ideas without worrying about, oh, well, I just spent all this money, but I can't pay rent or anything like that. I know I have 5 months left or, 11 months left and I'll be fine. I think that people really need to really understand that funding piece is important, because when you wake up, there's no check just coming in. There is no, paid time off. You have to get up and you have to make it work. Now you can get to a point where you have all that, but your first day out, it's not going to be like that. But entrepreneurship is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And I give similar advice with you, like you said, the 6 months to a year of operating expenses, and really making sure that you set aside enough funds to be able to passionately pursue the growth of your business. And I think one of the biggest things that people forget about too is the difference between a side hustle and, going the entrepreneurial road. A side hustle is something you do for extra income that can become an entrepreneurial effort and can become a full-time business, can become something you are going out to do. But it's a side hustle and entrepreneurship are not one and the same. And if you're really dead set and passionate about what you're trying to pursue, then you need to be properly prepared to go that road. And like you said, tough out those hard times.
Right.
And as it pertains to funding, let's talk a little bit more about how you figured out all these different aspects of things. Like you said, you got the 6 months to a year saved up. How are you handling finances now? Like, do you have an entourage of people that are helping you with your personal finances, with the teams, with each business's finances? Are they 3 separate teams? Are they one and the same? How do you manage all the finances of all the different working parts of what you have going on now?
Sure. I just got a financial advisor for personal, expenses and finances. And then our for-profit, I manage those. And then our nonprofit, we have a board and we have an accountant and things like that. Well, actually, both companies have a different accountant. So we do have a very a small team that helps us with finances, because there's a lot of, as you start to grow, there's just tasks that it's not that they're small, they're important, but there's so many tasks that, you need to trust people and delegate and believe that they'll do what they're supposed to do. So that's what I've done as well. Personal has its own person, DIBIA Athletic has its own person, and Dream has their own person, just so, there's no commingling, but then there's also someone to be responsible for to oversee what's going on. I think that's important to definitely have a handle on your finances, because, you could start your business and then all of a sudden you're making a lot of money, and then you start to realize a lot of money's coming in and a lot of money is going out. You have to really get a hold of that and grasp that early, so you understand where this money is going, why it's going, or maybe we don't need to spend that much money on marketing this month, or,
Right.
Things like that.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about how you found someone, like at what you said you just recently hired a personal financial person, what made it feel like it was the right timing in your life? What kind of questions did you need to ask that person? What are they doing for you?
Yeah. So I just felt it was just needed. To be honest, personally, I just was like, look, you have a lot of money coming in. Sometimes a lot of money is going out. Like, you need to really get a hold of this on the personal side. And I was in a cohort with a financial advisor, and one of my good friends, she had helped. So he had sent her my way, but then I also knew her from the cohort as well. So then that's how we got together. My father is a successful entrepreneur, accountant for many, many years. So he does our for-profit, and then our nonprofit is, there's a lot of grants that we go after that need certain type of audits and things like that. So we found someone who is very well versed in those type of audits for our nonprofit to help us. It was just something that, I started to look at our business as a real business. I think sometimes when people start business, they're like, oh, I have a business. I'm a business. People will ask, well, how much would you sell your business for? And you have your amount, but then you have to look at, does my business operate at that value level? And what does that mean? That means that in all assets, we need to be functioning correctly if we're trying to sell our business or just want to be a successful business. So I started looking at our business very different from, I think when I started it, it was still a hobby in my mind. But then I had to understand, it's like, look, I do not want to work as hard as I worked my first 3 years, in year 6 or year 7 or year 10. I want to be able to take a vacation. I would like to have Saturdays off, some Saturdays. I would like to, have time where I can travel and see my family. So you really look at how your business is running and what makes sense for your business. And if it's a real business, what do real businesses have in place, and go from there.
Gotcha. Since you're running a nonprofit, from a personal standpoint, how do you feel about charitable giving? Are you giving directly to your nonprofit, or when you decide personally about like giving to things, what is your mindset there?
This is our 4th year of our nonprofit. My first 2 years, I would give to other nonprofits, not that much, but I would support other nonprofits and things of that nature. Now I only give to our nonprofit. I give a large sum of money to my nonprofit for the past 3 years. But I believe in charitable giving, especially in the mission. I think that people have to start looking at the mission and not the people of the organization, because the mission is what's going to change the culture of whatever you're trying to accomplish. If you believe in helping kids in the inner city, then you need to find the organizations that are doing it the best, but definitely do your research. If you believe in childhood hunger, and that is something that you need to support, but it can't be where people will complain about certain things on social media or in certain venues, but then you ask them, well, how do you support any of those initiatives? And they don't support. And I'm not always saying that everything has to be financial. You can go and mentor a kid. You can sit down and do a STEM project with a kid. You can show a kid how to balance a checkbook. You can do so many other things that may not be financial, and that is okay, because maybe you're not in that position, or maybe you don't believe in giving to organizations because you've seen everything that's happened in FEMA in New Orleans and Red Cross and Haiti. Okay, and that's fine, but you can be on the ground and do some things. I think people today really have to step forward, and instead of talking so much, have to start doing more. whether that's with your pocketbook or with sweat equity. But it's definitely something that our community has to step up and start to do differently.
I definitely agree that giving is very important, and you've got to be able to think outside the box. At my company, we say you have to be willing to give your time, your talent, or your treasure. It's not just money when it comes to being able to think about giving.
Right.
All right. So, I think this is really good information that you shared. A lot, I think, of clarity people will find, when thinking about profit versus nonprofit. I kind of want to wrap up with like sort of a lightning round, if you will.
Okay.
And so it's just short answers. They don't have to be like super short. So, use your discretion there. Like, it's not one word answers, but 5 questions. So here we go.
Okay.
What is the most meaningful gift you've ever received? Who was it from, and why was it meaningful?
Oh, wow. Jeez. I may have to come back to that next question. I don't, I'm trying to think now. Man, that's a tough one for me. I'm gonna have to come back to that one.
All right. I can't remember. Best advice you've ever received?
Never waste the opportunity of youth.
Never waste the opportunity of youth. I love it. Worst advice you've ever received?
The worst advice I've ever received probably was to not, I think it was just not to do something because so many other people were doing it. Like when I started my business, it was just like, hey, so many other people are doing it. You probably shouldn't do that. And I think the person who told me just cared about me. They weren't, like a hater or anything like that, but it wasn't like the best advice. They're really successful. I think they just really care for me.
Right. So they were throwing caution, but sometimes you got to step out on a limb and really believe in yourself. That's kind of.
Yeah. I jump out of the window on a lot of stuff. So.
All right. So tell us a little bit about like what you're up to now, how people can find you, how they can be helpful to you, social media handles and all of that.
Right. So our Facebook fan page is DIBIA, DIBIA Athletic for our for-profit, and DIBIA Dream for our nonprofit. And that is the same on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And then personal is just Okpalobi, my last name, Okpalobi on Instagram. Go to our website, www.dibiaathletic.com or dibiadream.org. Definitely register to be a volunteer or keep up to date on our events, come out, say hi to the kids, or, if there's any time someone wants to present to the kids about financial literacy, health and wellness, STEM education, sports, or anything like that, definitely reach out. We always want the kids to see different people in the community.
That is wonderful. Okay, I got one more question. I know I said I was done, but now I'm not.
No, it's good.
So at Worth Listening, we have 2 mottos. The first is you don't have to get it all right to be all right. And that's really just about the idea that we've all made mistakes, but mistakes don't have to be crippling. Your inability to deal with the mistake is really what can cause that real catastrophe. And then our second is it's not about the numbers, but about the strategy. And I think you gave us some really great strategies today for, like you said, starting a nonprofit and starting a for-profit business and, running those 2 kind of right alongside one another. The whole idea here is that you need knowledge and to experience that kind of growth. And so with all that said, my final question for you is if you would share one thing that you would like to improve about your finances in the upcoming year.
Definitely save more. I'll give this piece of advice. My mentor was saying the goal for this year coming up is that you should be on Facebook less and save up enough money each month to buy stock in Facebook. And then also, if there's something else that you really like say me, it probably would be Nike, then you should buy a piece of Nike share or stock each month, because that's how you build generational wealth. Like that's what we're trying to do now, is build wealth. And then also, I'll give this as well, as he said, you should buy a townhome or real estate in college towns because you can rent that out. So that is my goal for next year, is to buy stock in Facebook and Nike per month, and then find 2 townhomes in college towns and rent them out. That is where my focus is for next year, and then build upon that each year.
I love it. Not just your goals, but the action items that are going to help you achieve your goals. Brandon, Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
No, thank you. This was amazing. Appreciate it.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Brandon's money memoir. Our goal on Worth Listening is to provide you with information that empowers you to take action in organizing your finances so you can pursue your goals. Brandon gave us some valuable nuggets today, including the importance of discipline in both your finances and the finances of your business, as well as the importance of contributing to charitable organizations, whether it's with your time, your talent, or your treasure. And our 2 words of the day today are in that same vein. The first is a for-profit company. The primary goal of the company is earning a profit. Now, sometimes these companies do raise funds, but those giving their dollars are doing so as an investment, which means they are expecting something back when they give up those dollars. Our other word of the day, nonprofit organization. While nonprofits are usually formed for the good of the public, they still have to participate in business activities as they have employees and administrative costs that help them with reaching their mission. Funds raised in this instance are generally referred to as donations. People give, and they're usually not looking for something in return. So make sure you know the difference between the two when you're looking to set up a company. Do your research when you're deciding what might be the best for what you're trying to achieve. And remember, the process, the cost, the requirements, and all of that for registration, they vary by state. Thank you for tuning in today. We hope you found this episode worth listening to. If you have financial questions, suggestions, or guests you would like to submit to us, share that with us at worth-listening.com. Thank you.